All right, it's 8, so let's go ahead and begin. I am Dr. Hartman. My office is across the street that way in Nethkin Hall, room 211. My office hours are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 to 11:30, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, 2:30 to 4. I want to point something out. I've written up on the board over here that Eta Kappa Nu, the Electrical Engineering Honor Society, for which I am the faculty advisor, offers free circuits tutoring to all College of Engineering and Science students on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2:30 to 4 p.m. It is not a coincidence that my office hours and that lines up perfectly. I will be there as well as some of our students to help you guys or any of your peers out should you be struggling in this class. My email address is my last name @latech.edu. My office phone number is listed. I teach so many damn classes, I'm never actually in it. So shoot me an email is the best way to actually get a hold of me. Or ostensibly call me during my office hours and I should be roaming around somewhere, okay? In the event that a different pandemic happens, we will move to Zoom. Let's see, so course objectives, you guys are gonna learn all kinds of good stuff about circuits. All right, textbook and reading material. So I've tried to list this textbook as optional or not required or whatever the hell it is that it needs to be so that you guys don't automatically wind up paying for it as part of your Bulldog bundle or whatever that, in my opinion, scam is. But the official textbook is Engineering Circuit Analysis, 9th edition by Height, Kimmerly, and Durbin. You don't need that book. You don't technically need any book for this class. I record all of my lectures and upload them to a shitty YouTube channel so that you can refer back to those. If you just absolutely need to have a textbook to refer to, I would highly suggest that you pop over to Google and type in ULABYCAD. The first link that pops up is for a textbook called Circuit Analysis and Design by Fawaz T. Ulabi, Maharbaz, and First. This is a textbook that was written by one of the most preeminent scholars in the field of electrical engineering. He is a professor emeritus at the University of Michigan, which is one of the best electrical engineering schools in the country. And he offers his textbook in a PDF format for free to everyone. So do not give Barnes & Noble your money. Download this book for free from this guy who's really, really good at his job, in my opinion. All right, let's see. Disability disclosure. If you need testing or classroom accommodations, contact the Department of Testing and Disability Services, and I've got the phone number and the website listed. In my, this is my 6th year, I believe, of teaching here at Louisiana Tech in a full-time thing. I have had students in the past say that they wanted to wait until after the first exam to see whether or not they really needed to actually file with testing and disability services and all that kind of stuff. That is the dumbest thing you can do. If you have a recognized learning disability or anything like that and are therefore entitled to extended time for your exams or taking them in a quiet room, you are a fool not to do that from the jump. We have common night exams in this class among all 3 sections, which means the option here, if you have the opportunity to go through testing and disability services, is you take a test with 100 of your sweaty peers who shuffle around, sniffle, sneeze, and all that kind of stuff, or you take in a room with like 4 other people where everything is nice and quiet and you can spread out and really focus on things. So if you have the opportunity, do not wait until you fail the first exam to see that you need the quiet room. Take the damn test in the quiet room. It will only be beneficial to you. All right, let's see, class attendance. So The attendance policy is the thing that's listed in the university catalog. Effectively, it says you can't miss more than 3 days or you'll get in trouble. Now, in the past, in this class and all my classes, I've given some little rant about how you guys are adults, and if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. And I do fundamentally believe that is true. But I have observed, particularly over the last 2 years, that the students who don't show up or say they're going to take the class effectively online because I put everything on Zoom, fail miserably, pretty terribly. So you are adults, and if you don't want to be here, that is entirely up to you. I'm not going to fail you just because you skip too many classes. You're effectively pretty much 99% of the time failing yourself if you choose to go that route. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for you to actually show up. We cover 24 different topics in this class over our 25 lectures. We go at a very fast pace, and if you fall behind, you're effectively lost. So it is critically important that you show up. All right, academic honor code, boilerplate: being a student of higher standards, you pledge to embody the principles of academic integrity. Academic misconduct, regarding the official policies are here. Regarding behavior, as long as you're less of a jerk to your peers than I am, I figure we're probably okay. With regards to cheating, I do not care for cheating at all. In fact, it upsets me quite a bit. I turned in, I think, 8 students last year for honor code violations regarding cheating. I do not enjoy doing it, but I will absolutely do it if I feel the need to. Our exams are, like I said before, common night exams. So a lot of you guys are going to be packed in a large room together. I typically make 4 different versions of the exam, and it is not as simple as just changing a couple of numbers. I ask for slightly different quantities and things like that. I use similar circuits, and I'm a raging jerk in as much as I like to use the correct answers for other versions of the exam as wrong answers for the version that I intend, which means you can look over at your neighbor and see, oh, they got A as this number, put it on your test and guarantee that you got the question wrong. So if you try to cheat on my exams, you will likely end up with a lower score than if you just tried and were bad at it. So just saying. All right, homework. A selection of homework problems are going to be posted on WebWork at the end of each lecture. That's not entirely true. There's not a homework assignment for this lecture that we're going to be having today, but practically every other lecture will have one. Students are granted unlimited attempts per problem. The specific due date for each homework is listed on WebWork. Dr. Swanbaum handles the WebWork for this class because I don't like it. So if you need to be added to WebWork or something like that, you need to reach out to him. It probably hasn't yet been set up for everybody since you won't actually have an assignment due until next week. So don't send him a bunch of emails over the weekend. But if you can't access the WebWork by, I'd say Monday, 5 p.m. on Monday, you probably need to give Mikey a heads up and let him know that you need to be added to things. All right, let's see, in-class assignments. So after each lecture, except for today's, a brief problem set will be distributed to be worked in class. I really need to change that. I post them all on Moodle. The expectation there is that you guys will print them off before you come to class. By the time this weekend is over, all 24 of them will be uploaded for you, and you'll have access to them throughout the duration of the quarter. The in-class assignments are really a short, typically 1 to 3 problems that try to reinforce the concepts that I'm covering in my lecture for that day. They are not graded for completeness, nor are they graded for correctness. If you are participating, meaning you are discussing with your peers at the table how to work these problems, you are doing exactly what I expect of you, and however far you get before class is over works for me. You receive full credit. If you are watching soccer games on your phone or otherwise being a jackass, you get no credit. So as long as you're trying, or at least look like you're trying to learn circuit stuff, you will get full credit for these. Mini labs are a similar thing. We have 8 miniature laboratory assignments for this class. They do require a kit to be purchased at the project-based learning office right down the hall. The kit is 10 bucks. Not every person needs a kit. In fact, if you work in groups of 4, only one of the 4 of you need to actually purchase the kit. That being said, make sure the person who purchases the kit is, somebody who's not going to drop midway through the quarter and then leave you guys in the lurch or something like that, because that has absolutely happened multiple times. I see some familiar faces in this classroom, fortunately or unfortunately, which means there may be a couple of students who have already purchased the kit. So maybe leech on with them and save yourself, $2.50 between your group of 4 or whatever. The mini labs are effectively another participation grade, really. I think that they sometimes can reinforce the topics where we are learning. Sometimes they're really just an exercise in, can you figure out how to connect stuff correctly and all that kind of good stuff. But largely, as long as you're actually working on the mini lab assignment and not, again, screwing around on your phone or whatever, you're going to get full credit for those as well. Exams. All right, so there's going to be 3 exams given during this course. All exams are closed book and closed notes. In the past, we have given a, an equation sheet for exam number 3. Specifically covering the complex power related material, because we cover that material in about 2.5 to 3 class meetings, and it's like 16 equations or something like that. And it's at the very end of the class, which means it's a bit overwhelming for you guys. So we do try to give you a little bit of something to help out there, but do not expect an equation sheet for exam 1 or exam 2. In the past, exam 3 was a cumulative exam, meaning roughly 30% of the material covered on exam 3 came from what we're going to cover here at the beginning of the class. 30% came from the material we cover between exam 1 and exam 2, and then 40% was the new material. I personally hate that because students who do well on exams 1 and exam 2 tend to absolutely screw off for exam 3 because they already have a good grasp of roughly 60% of the material and can coast through the rest of the course. So I believe I have convinced Dr. Swanbaum and Dr. Cronk, the other 2 instructors for this class this year, to allow me to no longer do cumulative exams for exam 3. Meaning the exam 3 test will only be on the new material. So that means you're going to have to try the whole quarter. Oh no. So anyway, only FE approved calculators are permitted for usage during the exam, which you guys should all already have them from taking your engineering 120 classes. I am not paid to endorse a particular calculator in any way, shape, or form. But I will tell you that the Casio FX991 is the most powerful calculator that you are allowed to have on these exams. It is capable of solving a system of equation that contains 4 equations and 4 unknowns, which is 1 equation, 1 unknown more than most of the other calculators. So if you are only going to have 1 calculator for this class, it should probably be a Casio FX991. It will make your life slightly easier. That being said, for the 3rd section of this class, we are going to be dealing with a lot of complex numbers and things like that. My personal favorite calculator to do complex number related math with is the TI-36X. And the reason why I prefer that particular calculator is because it is very, very easy to store variables and all of the complex number related functions are located in one single menu, whereas on the Casio calculators, it's spread out over multiple menus. So you have to remember where to go to do specific things and all that kind of stuff. So if you have $35 sitting around, buy one of each of those calculators that I mentioned, bring them both to the tests because they're capable of doing effectively the same functions, but one is better at one thing than the other. That's my recommendation. Again, I am not a paid endorsee or anything like that. I'm just trying to make your lives mildly easier while giving you just annoyingly hard tests. So, all right. Obviously, no cell phones during the exam. All right, so here's how grading in this class occurs. Your homeworks are 15% of your grade. It is important that you do these homeworks principally because they count for a letter grade and a half. They are useful. They're not really my favorite thing, and it's not really web work. It's just some of the problems are quite old, and in my opinion, were written just for the sake of being difficult. And I fundamentally don't agree with that. That's one of the reasons why I dedicate 4.5 extra hours of my time each week to helping circuit students, is to get through those just painfully difficult homework questions. Anyway, so homework is 15%. In-class assignments are 5% of your grade, and mini labs are 5% of your grade, which means a full letter grade is effectively participation. If you literally show up and don't screw around too much, you get a letter grade worth of points. Exam 1, 2, and 3 are all worth 30% apiece. And then there's that little fancy symbol there. So I have adopted this policy, and I believe I've convinced Dr. Swanbaum and Dr. Cronk to do it as well. But effectively, if you do poorly on one exam, it does not sink you in this class. The exam that you do the worst on only counts for half as much as the other exams that you take. Meaning, if you make a 50 on your first exam, which is extraordinarily likely, the class average has been usually somewhere between 55 and 65 for exam number 1. That does not prevent you from making an A in this class if you dedicate yourself and do well on exams 2 and 3. Effectively, I believe the math works out that as long as you make above a 34 on your first exam, it is mathematically possible for you to still make an A in this class. There will be some of you who will not hit that 34 benchmark. So just giving you fair warning now. Because of my generousness, meaning that a full letter grade comes for participation and I allow you to do poorly on one test, I do not curve. So if you want to make an A in this class, you need a 90.000 or better. Or if you're a civil engineer who's just trying to get through this damn thing and you need your D, that is a 60.000. A 59.9 is not good enough for me, okay? All right, syllabus changes. I don't expect any of this to change, but if it needs to, I will change it, and then I will tell you what the changes were. And then we have our boilerplate stuff about the emergency notification system, COVID-19 policy, and counseling services information. And then we have our tentative course schedule for what we're going to be covering for the next 10.5 weeks or whatever it is. So today it says syllabus and basic terminology, which means I actually do have a lecture prepared, and we're going to spend a good solid hour talking about getting everybody on the same page here. So does anybody have any questions regarding the syllabus or any of my policies before we move over to the lecture? All right. Oh, that's a take roll. William Bagley, thank you. Brody Barnhill, thank you. Aaron Abram. Amelia Boudreau. Thank you. Lucas Burns. There you go. Thank you. Jacob Carter. Hayden Kazhat. How bad am I mispronouncing that? Cashit. Okay. Jeffrey Chapa. Am I mispronouncing your last name as well? Okay. It's okay if you tell me that I'm doing it wrong. I actually had a student for 4 years in the electrical engineering program, taught him literally every year, called him Reichard the entire time. Then I had his little brother, and within 2 days, he was like, it's pronounced Reichard. So if I'm doing it wrong, please tell me I'm doing it wrong, or I will literally do it the entire time you're here at Tech. So anyway, Christopher Chipman. There we go. Sully Kopus. There we go. Lucas Duran. Caden Edwards. Andrew Finch. Thank you. Thomas Frayne. Samuel Frazier. Okay. Amanda Gordon. Andrew Gross. Grove. G-R-O. All right. Anna Hodnett. Did I get that right? Is it Anna? Is it Anna Reese? Is it? Okay. And Hodnett is correct or close enough? You're not going to bitch at me? Okay. Blake Inzina or Inzina. Which one? Yeah, I know. I see your hand. How do I say your last name? Inzina. Okay. William Klink. Thank you. Travis Nippers. Alexander Mounts. You're not related to Dr. Christy Mounts, the veterinarian, are you? Okay. Zachary Nalepa. Is it Nalepa, Nalepa? Okay, Nalepa. Just leave it alone then. Ryder Knockin. Do you have a family member named Lane? Okay, because I've never seen that last name before other than that guy, so apparently I'm just not aware of last names. Seems reasonable. Michael Olind. I feel like I'm mispronouncing that last name, and I feel like we've done this before. It is Olind? Okay. Hannah Parker. There we go. Nicholas Parker. There we go. Blake Perrin. Sarah Peterson. Ethan Rochelle. Okay. Did you have a brother that went through the EE program? Kyle or cousin? Okay. Again, just assuming last names and family, whatever. All right, should probably stop. Jonathan Sheffield. Jacob Smart. Jake Stelly. Daniel Taylor. Matthew Taylor. Macy Thibodeau. Cameron Thomas. Reagan Treadway. Mason Triplett. Gregory Whitehurst. William Wilson. Nicholas Winkleman. Thank you. And Nathan Wright. All right. So before we get started on the lecture, this isn't actually going to pop up until Monday when we actually have an in-class assignment. I am particularly terrible with names. So when you guys are working on your in-class assignments, especially for the first couple of weeks, I'm going to roam around the classroom to help you out, but I'm also going to be peering over your shoulder. I'm not a creepy weirdo. I'm trying to look at what your name is so that I can associate your name with you and all that kind of stuff. So if you see me roaming around the room, muttering random people's names, that's my attempt at trying to learn them. Okay, so just giving you fair warnings. You're going to hear me walk off and quietly say your name 3 times. That's me trying to remember who it is that you are. So anyway, All right, let's get things going with regards to our lecture. So what we are going to be talking about today, after I erase this old stuff that I apparently forgot to, is basic circuits terminology. So before we can begin analyzing circuits, we need to make sure that we're all effectively speaking the same language. There's a lot of jargon associated with the field of electrical engineering and even down at this level of simple circuit analysis. So I'm going to start by introducing a generic circuit element, okay? So this is what a generic circuit element is represented as. Just simply a box, and then it has a couple of what we're going to call terminals. Where a terminal is how we connect this particular circuit element to other circuit elements. I typically label my circuit elements. So in this case, we'll call this guy circuit element A. Circuit element A is an example of a two-terminal element. So that means that there is simply 2 points that we can connect to for this particular element. So you guys dealt with a lot of two-terminal elements in your Engineering 120 series, like diodes, resistors, batteries, and things like that. In this class, we are going to deal with elements that have more than 2 terminals on occasions. Now, I believe that you guys, or at least when I was teaching in the Engineering 120 series, you did have to deal with 3-terminal elements like transistors and 4-terminal elements like relays. Well, in circuits 1, all of the elements that we are going to be dealing with have 2 terminals except for one, the operational amplifier, which actually has 8. Okay, so we are going to treat it largely like a 3-terminal device, and we're going to talk about why we can do that. But again, I'm just trying to make sure that we're all speaking the same language and understand what terminals are. Okay, so whenever 2 or more circuit elements are connected together, so let's erase this little highlighting of what our terminals are and add a second circuit element here. And because I'm very unimaginative, I'm going to call this element B. So whenever we have 2 or more circuit elements connected together, we make a network. So I'm going to write that down as a definition. I can't spell or correctly. It's pretty bad. It's a 2-letter word, 2 or more. Circuit elements. All right. Where these 2 circuit elements are connected together, we are going to call a node. Where our formal definition will be that a node is a point of interconnection between 2 or more circuit elements. So if I add more circuit elements, I am obviously increasing the number of nodes in my system. Okay. When there are multiple nodes present, it is often helpful to identify the nodes. So how I identify nodes, you don't have to do it this way, but I find it to be pretty easy. I've been doing this for a very long time, and this is literally still how I do it. I use different colors. So this is a node, but I actually tend to expand my node a little bit, and we'll talk about exactly why I'm able to do this, I think next Wednesday. And so what I mean by expanding the node is I actually have it run from one element to the next element. And so I treat all of those points that I've labeled there in red as a single node point. Similarly, I'm going to have a node up here at the top and a node down here at the bottom. And I tend to not only distinguish the different nodes with different colors, but also assign them a label. Meaning this guy here might be node number 1. This guy over here might be node number 2. And this guy here might be node number 3. I might also use letters or some combination at times. Let me write that 3 a little bit better. So being able to successfully identify nodes is an important part of a numerous circuit analysis techniques and circuit simplification techniques. So it's important that we are able to do this kind of right from the jump. Hopefully you all learn something similar to this in your freshman classes. But if not, this is how I do it. And so this is how I teach it, okay? So now let's look at these connections, all right? So if we look at circuit elements A and B, we can see that there is only one node shared between those two circuit elements. We call this a series connection. So a series is a connection of two, and I'm going to put an asterisk up here, circuit elements with no branching paths. So let me explain what I mean by the statement that there are no branching paths. Okay? The connection between circuit element B and circuit element C is similar because they share exactly one node, the blue node, but there is a branching path that also includes touching element D. So that means B and C are not in series because there is another connection there. Now I put an asterisk here on the word two because when we cover the concept of Kirchhoff's current law in a couple of days, we are going to modify our definition for a series connection to include something related to electrical current. But for now, with these generic circuit elements, we're going to constrain our definition to be a single point, or whenever two elements share a single point of interconnection, we consider them to be in series. If we look at elements C and D, we can see that they share a connection at their top terminals, which is the blue node, and they share a connection at their bottom terminals, which is the green node. So we consider this type of connection where both pairs of terminals are shared to be a parallel connection. So parallel means that we have a connection between two or more circuit elements where both sets of terminals are shared. So let me ask you guys a question. We've used elements C and D here to illustrate the concept of a parallel connection. Is element A connected in parallel to elements C and D? No. Why not? Because A is connected to the red node and B and C aren't. They don't share both sets of terminals. They only share the bottom term. Okay. I'm saying this with the full understanding that it will literally be a month and a half from now, and there will still be some of you who will make this mistake every now and then, not regularly, but every now and then. You'll look at something and you'll be like, oh, these elements are in parallel, when they aren't. If you use this multicolor scheme to identify your nodes every time, it's pretty much impossible to make that mistake, because the only way that elements will be in parallel is if they share both sets of colors, not just one set of colors. Okay, so I know it's annoying maybe to have to go buy colored pencils or markers or anything like that, but if you adopt this scheme, you will make less mistakes in the long run. I guarantee it. All right, so let's work an example problem. I'm going to do this on a second page, and then we're going to go back to that page in a moment. So let's say that we have the following network. I want to know the following three pieces of information. Number one, how many nodes does this network contain? Number 2, which of the elements are connected in series? And number 3, which of the elements are connected in parallel? So let's start with question 1, and we're going to answer that by simply identifying our different nodes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here at the top terminal of A, and I'm just going to keep going until I hit an element. Now there is another path that I could take, and so this is all one single node. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start from B. I can go up to A. I can go to the right to F, but on my path to the right, I saw some branches, so I could go up to D or down, and then I can touch C or G. So that's all one large node. Now, let's do the bottom terminal of B, which is this connection. We've made all of our connections to D, so let's move along to E. So we have this one. And then here's what we have connected to element F, like so. And now I'm just going to go back through and count these. So node 1 will be in red, node 2 will be in blue, node 3 is in green, node 4 is in orange, node 5 is in, I don't know, this light blue or teal or something. So pretty obviously, there are 5 nodes in this network, which contains 8 elements. Okay. Now I'm going to kick things to you guys. Which of these elements are connected in series? So B and C are connected in series because they share a single node point, the green node or node 3. And there is no branching path, so I agree with that wholeheartedly. Are there any other elements connected? I think I heard E and H. That's correct. E and H are connected in series as well. Any others? No. So we only have those 2 different series connections. All right. Now let's talk about which ones are connected in parallel. Anybody have any thoughts? A and D are connected in parallel because they share the red node and the blue node. I agree with that. F and G as well because they share the blue and the light blue. So A and D, F and G, and that's it. How would we describe the connection between D and F? So this is a trick question. It isn't in series, it isn't in parallel, and I am trying to let you guys know that that's perfectly okay. Not everything has to be connected in series or in parallel. None of the above is a valid answer, okay? That's something that I don't think is reinforced enough in your Engineering 120 series classes, is that not everything can be neatly put into one of those two boxes, okay? So there are absolutely going to be times where I might ask you how many of these or which are connected in series. The answer might be none of them, and that's okay, all right? Okay, so let's go back to the previous page and continue our discussion of terminology. Right? So what I'm going to do here really quickly, we're done talking about nodes, series connections, and parallel connections. So I'm going to erase this and kind of go back to the original drawing in black and white, as it were. I'm doing this purely because I don't want the diagram to become too cluttered. All right. So when I added elements C and D, or really when I added that bottom line there, I transformed our network into a circuit. The difference between a network and a circuit is simply any network that contains a closed path constitutes a circuit, okay? So the fact that we have closed paths from element A to B to C and back to A, or A to B to D and back to A, or C to D and back to C, means this is a circuit. Not all of the paths need to be closed for it to be a circuit. If any path is closed, we have a circuit, okay? So our definition for a circuit then is any network that contains, oh goodness, my screen moved on me, at least one closed path. Adding on to that, we will call a loop any closed combination of elements and nodes or wires. So how many, let me scroll back down here so you guys can continue to write it down if you're doing it. How many loops does this circuit that I've drawn contain? I actually listed all of them. How many fingers do you have up there? 2? I disagree. 3. Because a loop is any closed combination, there are 3. So let's explain them. All right, this is great. Mistakes are wonderful. If one person makes a mistake, I guarantee you there are 5 other people who are being quiet who also made the same one. So this gives us an opportunity to explain things, okay? So let's start down here, okay? I go through element A, through element B, down through element C, and back to element A. That's one loop. I can start here, go up through C, across, down through D, and connect back. And that's a second loop. And I'd be willing to guess that those are the 2 that Mr. Parker identified. The third one, which is less obvious, is this one, where we go from A through B and continue going, come down through D, like so. So this particular circuit contains 3 loops, right? There will always be a loop around the perimeter of the circuit. All right, so now I want to talk about the concept of meshes. A mesh is any loop which doesn't contain a smaller loop inside of it. So effectively, loops 1 and 2 would be considered meshes, but loop 3 would not because it contains loops 1 and 2. So a mesh is any loop which does not contain a smaller. All right. Now, let's revisit this circuit and answer 3 more questions. Actually, it just looks like 2 more questions. How many meshes does this circuit contain? And then how many loops? Does this circuit contain? Okay. Again, I'm going to take a moment here to kind of reset this back to our black and white drawing so that it's not quite as busy. I'm going to erase these numbers as well. All right, so we've reset the circuit. How many meshes are contained? 4. Identifying meshes is pretty easy, which is wonderful because there's a technique called mesh analysis that we're going to learn in about 2 weeks that you guys are going to use like a crutch to solve the overwhelming majority of your circuits, regardless of whether or not it's actually the best or easiest way to do it. But that's okay. So we have 4 different meshes formed by the window panes of this circuit, right? So we have this mesh, let's call it 1. This mesh, which is 2. This mesh, which we'll call 3. And let's see. This mesh, which we'll call number 4, right? So hopefully pretty easy to see. There are 4 meshes. Now, how many loops does this circuit contain is actually a significantly harder question, okay? We know that it contains at least 4 since all meshes are loops. So how I would like to break things down here is one mesh loops, two mesh loops, three mesh loops, and four mesh loops. We know from the previous question, there are exactly 4 one mesh loops, okay? How many two mesh loops are there? Also 4, right? So we could combine, I'm gonna run out of colors. So we could combine those two. So that's one two mesh loop. We could combine these two. So that's a second two mesh loop. We can combine these two. So that's a third two mesh loop. Or we could combine these two for a fourth two mesh loop. So there are 4 one mesh loops and 4 two mesh loops in this particular circle. How many three mesh loops are there? Also 4, right? So the 4 different ways that we can make an L shape are our 3 mesh loops, right? So effectively, this is 1. This is 2. I'm trying to remember how I did the first one. Let's see. So we did 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, like so. And then 1, 2, or excuse me, 1, 2, 4, like so. Yeah. So there are 4 different 3 mesh loops that we have here. And then lastly, how many 4 mesh loops are there? Just the 1 around the outside, right? So if we add all these together, there are actually 13 loops in this 4 mesh circuit, okay? Now, yes?
I have a question about the 2 mesh loops.
Sure.
Could you not do the 2 in like a diagonal, add in like a little figure 8?
So the problem with that, that's a good question, but the reason why we wouldn't consider that is because if we went around like your suggestion here, like so, this is closed. So it's done. That's a loop. So that's why we can't consider this a 2 mesh loop, because it's actually 2 fully closed things, and a loop should just be 1 closed path.
But isn't the connection between like the 1 and 3 mesh, isn't that 2 closed right there?
So what I mean, okay, let me explain myself slightly better then. And I drew it to where I'm going to have to redraw the black line there. Okay. So I understand your argument. You're effectively saying that there's this thing right here that's in the way. So what I'm explicitly saying is, let's imagine that we were following a current. Let's get slightly ahead of ourselves, okay? We can avoid that branch to form a closed path, right? So that's the distinction there. Those two absolutely do touch each other in that point, but there is a path that current could flow that would avoid that branch. The distinction between going through 1 and 4 is that any current, let me do it in a slightly different color. Let's try this gray. So if we went around this way, and then we had this connection here, any current flowing in has to flow out, so that is a closed loop. Any current flowing in has to flow out, so that's also a closed loop. We're not avoiding anything. So those diagonals don't really count. I definitely understand how you could think that would be that way, but we have to deal with like the law of conservation of energy and the law of conservation of charge for circuits, and that's what's telling us effectively that those don't count while these others do. Is that helpful?
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense. Putting it all together.
Yeah. Yeah, so, all right, so that is all that I have prepared for today. So we get to knock off a good 50 minutes early. I hope you guys have, I don't know, a better time in the remainder of your classes for today and a good weekend.